As you would have heard just before the advertisements, one of the issues that I don't know that people necessarily voted over it, it was certainly an embarrassment for the Labour government, was that they had promised to build literally tens of thousands of homes to recognise or at least to restore New Zealand from a housing crisis that they inherited, they said, in 2017. And we've seen plenty of photos of motels, particularly in the Rotorua area, being taken over as emergency housing and the like, and despoiling, in actual fact, many of the areas in which those motels have happened. And not just, can I say, in Rotorua, but throughout the country. They've been poor images, they've been bad images. We've talked about the homeless. As I said, I'm not all that convinced that necessarily too many people voted on that particular issue. I think there were much more pressing ones at the election we just held. But nevertheless, the incoming national government or national-led government will still need to look at that particular issue because it ain't going away. And the affordability of homes, both to buy and to rent, remains a key issue for many thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders. There's always a suggestion, though, that you always look to the government to provide the solution. So if there's a problem in the world or a problem in New Zealand, we always go, it's government's problem. And we always look to the government. Now, and there's been long and classic proof that the government's not really very good at solving problems. It's bloody good at creating them. But if you look at education, you look at health, look at the state of the economy, you look at the state of our export receipts, and if you look at just public housing, there's not an awful lot of evidence, if you go back over the decades, that the government, in actual fact, is the solution. No, I don't mean to be very radical about this, but wow, enter simplicity. And let me introduce you right now to their founder and managing director of that business, Sam Stubbs. Sam, thank you very much for joining us. Nice to have you on.
G'day. Thanks very much.
You are the founder and managing director of Simplicity. Before we actually get into what you are planning to do with that housing issue, tell us a little bit about Simplicity, will you?
Yeah, sure. Look, we're a non-profit KiwiSaver and fund manager, so we've been around for 7 years now. We're really set up to make New Zealanders wealthier and give them the sort of choices and dignity in life that more money brings. And so in that 7 years, we set it up around the kitchen table, and we now have, 146,000 members, over $5 billion under management. And we're actually ultimately owned by a charity, so we give 15% of our fees to charity as well. But I think a really simple way of looking at it was if you sort of thought of us as the Southern Cross of finance, you wouldn't be too far wrong there. So set up to last forever and really make it a very long-term enduring difference in the well-being of Kiwis.
Okay, I mean, the amazing thing is you've got these altruistic aims, Sam. You're a fund manager, came out of the private sector, done what you're doing now. You've managed to attract $5 billion worth of funds into what seems to be a sort of, mum and apple pie organisation. That would suggest to you that people actually endorse those views.
Yeah. Look, I think, Michael. People are smart, right? Like, if you basically say, look, our aim is to basically make you money, and in that process we can also do a lot of good. I think there's some initial scepticism. An awful lot of people think that it's got to be just about money or just about charity, but you can actually do both. And it's not even that the charity side of it in this case, Michael. It's that you can actually invest in the very long term in things like housing and infrastructure, which actually does an awful lot of people an awful lot of good, and it's what we need as a country. And you can do that with KiwiSaver money, and that ends up actually being a really good investment. Just ask anyone who bought power company shares all those years ago, right? So it is actually possible to, and in fact, I think that our very long-term vision is a really competitive advantage for us because we don't have to make very short-term decisions, very short-term gains. We're ultimately totally invested in the long-term welfare of our members in New Zealand, and that's a really significant competitive advantage, as you can see with this housing stuff we're doing right now.
Well, and that's the extraordinary thing. You see, if I give you my money, if I give you my KiwiSaver, Sam, to Simplicity, and off you go, and you give me my money, I'm expecting you to have a balanced portfolio. There'll be investments overseas in New Zealand. You'll have money in government stock. There'll be cash reserves, blah, 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 blah. And, and I'll get charged those fees from it. I won't necessarily make any money, I have to say, by the traditional investment advisors either. You, on the other hand, are saying, actually, we can combine an altruistic end, which is building more houses, with investment. So in actual fact, you're going to make money if you give you my KiwiSaver or give you directly my investment Simplicity. You're going to go and build houses, and then you're going to sell or rent them, and I will still get a return, possibly a better return than I would on a balanced investment portfolio. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, effectively, Michael. Yeah, I mean, look, all Kiwis know houses are a great investment, right? Everyone is tax incentivised to do it. And in many ways, I think someone described the New Zealand economy as a housing market with an economy tacked on, right? But we all know and understand houses. So it's perfectly possible to build and own and rent and sell these things and actually make really, really good returns. Those generations of New Zealanders know that. We're just doing it in a way which is a little bit different, which is to say, okay, you don't have to do it yourself. Here is, in this case, a managed fund, or with our KiwiSaver funds, where we will do it for you. And we will go out and basically, build and rent and develop or lend mortgages on thousands of houses.
Yeah, but you're actually going to build 25,000 homes. I mean, that's a stunning number. I mean,
no, that's huge. So actually what we're intending to do is three things. So we have three areas where we know, or we're highly confident that we have a competitive advantage for our members. And one is in the build to rent area. So we're going to build, we're aiming to build and rent 10,000 of those around the country. We also have been making low-cost first-home mortgages now for 3 years, and that's been very successful. So we know we want to lend up to 10,000 to 10,000 first-home buyers, and they've been traditionally paying between 0.5% and 1% below what the banks would charge for an equivalent mortgage. And then the other one is in community housing, where you've got all these community housing providers all around the country. They've got plans, they've got land, they've got builders, they're all lined up. They're always choked for finance. And so what we've been working on for the last 2 years now is working with a non-for-profit business called Community Finance, and they can actually take our money in the form of a bond. They issue a bond, and that means that they can make mortgage funding available to community housing providers. So we've invested about $40 million in the last 2 years. That's helped fund 144 community houses. We've done about almost 280 first-home mortgages now, and we've invested about $120 million in build-to-rent housing. So about $340 million over the last 2 or 3 years. And what we've been doing, Michael, is just seeing whether or not we can really scale that up. Like, does this actually work from an investment point of view? The answer is it absolutely does. But do we also have scale? And the answer is we absolutely do now. We have the capacity to build around about 1,000 homes a year and rental homes a year. We think we can lend about 1,000 mortgages and help build about 500 community houses. So we've gone out and said, look, time now for us to provide a private market solution to help fix the housing crisis. Let's do this in scale. And
Sam, are you gambling? I mean, gambling is the wrong word. Are you suggesting that the capital gain from these will return the investment to me, the investor, if I put it into it, and that you are thinking that property will always appreciate in value? Well, certainly in the long term, anyhow.
Oh no. No. I mean, sometimes it goes. I mean, over the long term, yes, because if you look at all markets around the world, there's a pretty close correlation between economic growth and property prices. But sometimes it'll go down and sometimes it'll go up. But what's interesting about investing in property, Michael, and Kiwis know this, right? Your mortgage and your rent is the first bill you pay, right? Or it's the last bill you won't pay, right? So if you have an investment which fundamentally receives mortgage payments or rents, that tends to be a pretty solid business over the long term because people pay those bills. I call that getting close to the cash. So from an investor point of view, one of the reasons New Zealanders invest, I think, in properties is not only because it has appreciated over time, but also because people pay their mortgage and pay their rent. So, and in that sense, this is this will be one of those investments. I think it might actually feel a little bit boring over time. I think, what we're hoping for is that there will be some incremental added value from the properties we're developing increasing in value. We get some development profits, but 75% of it is in, bonds and mortgages and cash and all those sort of things which aren't particularly racy in terms of returns, but tend to be more reliable in terms of returns. Most importantly, though, for people who are investing and in other income-related investment, this is another alternative for them. And to give you the idea of the scale, Michael, it's about $240 billion of New Zealanders' money sitting there in term deposits, and this is not
$240 billion
for an investment. 240 billion, right? So this is not a term deposit; it's a different sort of investment. But goodness gracious me, if 5% of term deposits were put into this fund in a non-profit way, we could build and fund 25,000 homes. That is the possibility. And as you said before, government doesn't have to do all of the heavy lifting here. We can do it, but we now have the
So why can you
it.
do it, Sam? Why can Simplicity build 25,000? I mean, that's your plan over the next year. 25,000 homes you've already built. I think you've built and rented out 160. Why can the private sector do it and the public sector can't?